The road narrowed the deeper they went. Trees loomed overhead like silent sentries, filtering the late September sun through a canopy of golden green. The forest was quiet, no birdsong, no wind, just the hum of tires against dirt. Calla leaned her head out of the window and closed her eyes, her long dark hair fluttering in the breeze. Joran glanced over at her, one hand on the wheel, the other resting over hers. "Almost there," he said softly. She opened her eyes, smiling. "This better be worth the 10 hours of driving and the zero-cell bars." He grinned. "That's the point. No phones, no pings, no stress." The cabin emerged slowly, as if it had grown from the forest itself, to stories of perfectly stacked logs, a green metal roof, and a wide porch that seemed too well kept to be this deep in the woods. Calla stepped out of the truck, staring at the place. It looked exactly like the photos from the listing. Maybe better, but something about it made her skin tighten. Like the air here was heavier. She didn't say that. Instead, she grabbed the bags from the back and walked up the steps, boots thudding gently on the wood. Joran followed with the groceries and a bottle of wine. The key was under the third step, exactly where the owner said it would be. When the door swung open, the first thing that hit her was the scent of lemony chemical. To clean. Like someone had just scrubbed it down. Calla wrinkled her nose. "Smells like someone murdered a bottle of bleach in here." Joran kissed her cheek. "At least it's not mold. We'll make it cozy." They unpacked slowly, easing into the space. The interior was all pine and stone-high ceilings, a stone fireplace, a fur rug that felt too deliberate. Calla wandered through the rooms. The bedroom was minimal. One queen bed with stiff white sheets, 2 bedside lamps, and a window that looked out into a sea of trees. "No TV," she called out, "just books and board games." "And wine," he answered from the kitchen. By dusk they'd lit a fire and opened the bottle. She curled up against him on the couch, his hand brushing against the bare skin of her shoulder. The firelight flickered against her face, making her look carved from something soft and golden. He kissed her collarbone. She didn't pull away. Later, they danced slow, barefoot, half-drunk, her phone barely catching a single bar of service to play the song they'd picked as their first dance. Joran dipped her low and kissed her breathless, the heat between them spilling like the wine they forgot on the floor. She pulled him toward the bedroom. They made love with the windows open, moonlight pouring in like water. It felt raw and real, and vulnerable. His fingers tangled in her hair, her voice trembling in the stillness. Outside, the forest listened. Inside, they didn't care. At some point in the night, she awoke. No sound, no reason. Just her body telling her something was ... wrong. She reached for Joran. He was still there, his arm draped over her. The fire had gone out. The room was dark, but not cold, and then it came. Knock, 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 not hurried, not uncertain. 3 deliberate knocks on the front door. Calla's blood froze. She sat up slowly, her heart thudded, a slow, sick rhythm. "Joran," she whispered, shaking him. He stirred. "What?" "Someone's at the door." He blinked, still half asleep, then sat up. "You sure?" She nodded. 3 knocks. He slipped on his jeans, grabbed the fireplace poker from the side of the wall. The cabin creaked under his footsteps. Calla followed him, her hands shaking. He reached the door, looked through the peephole. Nothing. He opened it slowly. The porch light clicked on, bathing the empty steps in pale yellow. Forest, just forest. He stepped outside, scanning the tree line. There were no footprints in the dirt, no breeze, no sound. "I don't see anyone." "Close it," she said quickly. He did. Locked the deadbolt, slid the chain into place. They went back to bed. But sleep didn't return easily. The next morning, Calla made coffee and stepped outside with her mug, squinting at the sun rising over the pines. Something about the silence made her uneasy. The truck was still parked. The woods were still the same. She reached into her pocket, pulling out her phone to check the timed photo they'd taken together the evening before. She scrolled through the shots there, 2 of them smiling on the porch. His arm around her waist, her head tilted against his shoulder. She stopped cold in the last photo. Taken just as the timer went off, there was a third figure, far in the background. Between the trees, still watching, a figure in a dark jacket, and what looked like antlers. She zoomed in. The face was covered. The figure hadn't moved, hadn't posed. Just stood there, watching them. Kala dropped the phone. It landed face down on the porch. Inside, Joran called out to her. She didn't answer. She just stared into the woods, her heartbeat echoing in her ears, and whispered, "Joran, we're not alone." The cabin door was wide open when the sheriff's deputy arrived. Birds fluttered from the trees as the cruiser rolled to a stop on the gravel path. Dust hung in the air, like breath in winter. Sheriff Marlon Dace stepped out slowly, adjusting the belt around his hips. The air was thick with pine and something else, bleach and old smoke. He called out, "Kala, Joran." Nothing answered but the wind. The front porch looked untouched. 2 camping mugs rested on the rail. A pair of hiking boots neatly placed. Near the door, he stepped inside, boots thudding against the wood floor. His gaze swept the room. No signs of struggle. No broken furniture. The fireplace was cold. The wine bottle was still open on the table, half full. 2 glasses, one with lipstick. He moved deeper inside. The air smelled aggressively clean lemon and bleach, layered so thick it burned the inside of his nose. The couch cushions had been fixed, the bed made, but only partly, like someone had started to fix it, then walked away. He checked the bathroom, towels folded, toothbrushes gone. He crouched beside the fireplace and picked up a faint smudge from the rug. Something dark. He rubbed it between 2 gloved fingers. Not dirt. Behind him, the wind whispered through the open door, and for a second, he swore he heard something under the floorboards. But it was gone before he could place it. Outside, he met with the local who made the 911 call. Lyle Kirkman was a hunter and the unofficial caretaker of the area. He'd been checking his cameras when he noticed the same truck sitting outside the cabin for over a week. "No one's come in or out," Lyle said. "Truck's been sitting. No sounds, no smoke from the chimney. Ain't like most tourists, they at least go for hikes." Sheriff Dace nodded, looking back at the cabin. No neighbors reported screams. "There ain't neighbors," Lyle replied. "Closest house is mine, 6 miles east." The sheriff returned to his cruiser, leaned against the hood, and made the call. "I've got a missing persons situation. Couple checked in last Friday. No exit, no cell ping. Belongings gone, but vehicle here. Cabins to clean. Real clean." He didn't say what he was really thinking. To clean meant something had been erased. Back in the city, 200 miles away, Isla stared at the voicemail left by her sister 2 weeks ago. Kala's voice was soft, laughing. She talked about the forest being quiet, the night being peaceful, Joran cooking on a camping stove. Isla played it again, over and over, until she could recite it by heart. She hadn't heard from them since. She filed the report. She begged the police to take it seriously. She posted online, made missing flyers, contacted the cabin rental site. The owner hadn't seen them leave. Said he'd gone up 2 days later to clean and everything was in order. But Kala hadn't come back. Neither had Joran, and Isla could feel it deep in her bones. Something had happened there. In the following weeks, the investigation stalled. No blood, no break-in, no ransom. Just a truck and a couple who vanished. They called it a mystery. They told Isla to move on. She did 10 single quotes. She kept the photo from that last day, the one Kala had posted, just before going silent. Isla had stared at it so long, she could see it in her dreams. Her sister, in a purple dress, smiling, Joran, holding her waist. Behind them, between the trees, a shape, a tall figure, still wearing something twisted. Antlers. When Isla sent it to the police, they dismissed it. Light flare, a tree branch. Could be anything, but it wasn't. 6 months later, she ordered a burner phone, dyed her hair darker, and forged a fake identity. Mara Pen, travel blogger. She booked the cabin for 3 nights, paid in cash, used an alias, packed her old leather duffel with clothes, field notebooks, a voice recorder, and a .38 revolver she hadn't fired in years. She arrived in late autumn, right as the leaves turned to flame, and the mornings tasted like ice. The road was the same one Calla had described, so were the trees, and the sign nailed to the porch that said, "Moss Glen welcomes you." She parked beside the same truck from the missing persons report, still sitting there, tires sunken into the soil, pine needles blanketing the windshield like no time had passed at all. Isla stepped onto the porch. The cabin door creaked when it opened, slow and theatrical. Inside, nothing had changed. The same scent of lemon and chemical. To clean, too prepared, she dropped her bags and walked slowly through the rooms. Nothing was out of place. Nothing was personal. No scraps, no mess, not even a stray hair. But she could feel something breathing underneath the walls. Her fingers brushed along the wooden floor near the bed. She crouched. Scratches, not from furniture. Thin parallel lines, fingernail deep. She whispered into her recorder. Arrived at Moss Glen. Floorboards beneath the bed show marks could indicate a struggle. As night fell, she sat by the fireplace, wine untouched, pistol on her lap. The woods were still, too still, and then it came, knock, 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 not on the door. Beneath her feet, Illa didn't move for a long time. The knocks had stopped, but the echo of them vibrated in her bones like aftershocks. She crouched near the hearth, every muscle in her body tense, hand resting on the cold steel of the revolver. Her eyes dropped to the floor. Again. 3 boards in front of the fireplace looked ... different. Newer. The polish didn't match the rest. She pressed her palm to them, barely perceptible movement, like they weren't fully nailed down. Her breath caught in her throat. She stood and paced, trying to slow her heartbeat. She forced herself into action, pulling out her camera, snapping shots of everything: floor marks, dust patterns, even the untouched dinnerware in the kitchen drawer. Every photo felt like a thread winding tighter around her chest. She opened the fridge. It was fully stocked. Eggs, bread, canned fruit. She hadn't brought any of it. She checked the cabinet, dozens of items, neatly aligned granola bars, canned beans, peaches, pasta. It was too much for a short rental. This wasn't a cabin prepared for visitors. This was someone's lair. And someone had been maintaining it, even after Calla vanished. She opened the pantry again, slower this time, brushing aside boxes until she spotted it wedged behind a can of stew, a small wooden crate. She pulled it out, fingers trembling. Inside, a Polaroid camera, undeveloped film, a few rusted rings, and a single folded piece of cloth. When she opened it, a wave of nausea hit her. It was lace, deep violet, torn at the collar. She knew that dress. Calla had worn it the day they left. Isla dropped it, staggered backward, and caught her breath. Her hands were shaking violently, her lungs pulling too fast. She needed to know. She returned to the floorboards, this time with her pocket knife. She wedged the blade into the edge of one plank and pried. It groaned under the pressure, but lifted. Beneath it was a hinge, a hidden latch. She swallowed hard and pulled. The trapdoor creaked open like something waking from a long sleep. A ladder descended into blackness. The smell was immediate: dampness, something metallic. She turned on her flashlight, gripped the revolver tighter, and began to climb down. The crawl space was tight, barely 4 feet high. The flashlight flickered across exposed insulation, rusted ductwork, and dirt floors. Cobwebs hung like veins in the corners. Then her light caught at a cluster of objects buried in the soil. She crawled toward them, ignoring the filth. A boot. Women's purple trim. She reached out and gently brushed the dirt away. Another. A charm bracelet. A cracked phone. And then bones. Small human. A rib. She covered her mouth and tried not to scream. She kept crawling, moving toward the far corner. There, tucked into the earth, was a box sealed with duct tape. She tore it open. Hair, bundles of it, tied, tagged, more rings, a single photograph. Calla. She was in the cabin, eyes wide in terror, lips parted like she'd just screamed. Behind her stood a man in a deer mask, antlers wide and sharp. His gloved hand held her shoulder like a claim. Illa dropped the photo. Her whole body felt like it was buzzing from inside. The walls were too tight. The air to sour. She turned to leavened, froze. A noise above her, a slow, deliberate creak from the floorboards. She shut off the flashlight and held a breath. The footsteps were faint but real. They moved from the fireplace toward the bedroom. She waited, shaking, heart rattling her ribs. Then silence. She counted 2. 60. Nothing. She climbed up the ladder with one hand, revolver in the other. She eased the trapdoor closed and covered it with the rug again. She moved through the house silently. Each step careful. No one was there. But the door was ajar. She was sure she'd locked it. She approached and pushed it shut. Bolted it again, then pulled the chain. Her eyes scanned the room. Everything looked the same. Until she saw the camera. The one from the crate. It was sitting on the mantel. Now she hadn't put it there. She walked toward it cautiously, fingers hovering just above it. Click. A sudden sound outside the window. She spun, gun raised. Nothing. Silence. She stepped to the window and pulled back the curtain. On the porch, someone had left a dead crow. Its wings were outstretched, feathers ruffled, eyes empty, pinned through its chest with a rusted nail. She backed away. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "He's still here." The lights flickered, and then the knock came again. Illa didn't go to the back door. She stood frozen in the center of the cabin. One hand wrapped tight around the revolver, the other holding her breath. The knock hadn't repeated. It had landed. Once loud, singular, intentional. Like a threat that didn't need echo. She backed away slowly, keeping her eyes on the kitchen, the hallway. The corners where shadows pooled. She shut off the overhead light and lit only the lamp beside the couch. Warm, dim, and quiet. Every sound became too loud. Her footsteps. Her breath, even the soft creak of the wooden walls cooling in the night. She slept in short bursts. Curled on the couch with her gun tucked into her side. No dreams, just flinching darkness. When morning came, she bolted upright with the rising sun cutting through the curtains. The cabin was cold and still. To still, she needed answers. She moved quickly, tying her hair back and layering a jacket. Over her t-shirt outside, the air had shifted thick with mist and silence. The trees stood like monuments, solemn and indifferent. She stepped off the porch and began circling the cabin. Scanning the perimeter, behind the cabin, the ground sloped downward into a shallow clearing. A place she hadn't checked before. Her boots sank slightly into the soft dirt. She stopped. Something about the soil was off. It had been disturbed. She crouched, brushed her fingers over the ground, and felt loose topsoil give way. A mound, not quite a grave, but not untouched either. She pulled her hunting knife from her belt and began to dig. Carefully, slowly, only a few inches down, her blade hit something solid. She scraped around it. It was a small silver locket, crusted in dirt but unmistakable. She held it up and wiped it with the edge of her sleeve. When she opened it, her own voice caught in her throat. A photo of Kala and her, maybe 10 years ago. At a fairground, their heads pressed together, grinning. That locket had been Isla's birthday gift to Kala when they were teenagers. It had been missing for years. She stood abruptly, eyes scanning the trees. Nothing moved, but someone had put this here. She snapped a photo of the locket, bagged it in the plastic pouch from her coat, and marked the spot with a stick. Then she noticed something else: half-buried tire tracks, leading away from the slope and back into the forest. Recent, faint, but real. She followed them as far as they lasted, maybe 20 feet, until they vanished into a thicker part of the woods. No trail, no clear direction. Just enough to suggest someone had been hauling something, or someone. She returned to the cabin on edge. The place felt even worse in daylight. Too perfect. As if it wasn't lived in, just preserved. She went back to the crawlspace, climbing down again. More determined this time. She brought a heavier flashlight and began clearing more of the soil. Beneath the far side, she uncovered more remnants. A man's watch still ticking. A cracked engagement ring. The engraved words inside made her chest seize up. Forever yours, C. She knew that ring. Carla had shown it off to her for hours the day Joran proposed. She leaned against the wall and whispered, "They died here." And then she saw it. A wooden panel set into the crawlspace wall. Small, square, like a cupboard, sealed behind drywall. She pried it open. The hinges squeaked. Inside were boxes. She opened the first one with gloved hands. Polaroids, dozens. Each one captured a different couple. Some smiling in front of the fireplace, some in the forest, some not smiling. The last few showed bruised skin, ropes, eyes wide with terror. In the final photo, a woman's body lay curled in the corner of a room, her wrists bound. A figure loomed behind her in the same mask-white bone, black horns, dead eyes. The man had been photographing his victims. Illa bagged what she could. Photographs, a small knife, a necklace she didn't recognize. Then she paused, staring at the wall. Carved into the inside panel was a list. Names. 12 lines. 12 couples. Dates beside each one, written in thin, obsessive lettering. 2015 Ankaya and Joran. Each name had been crossed out, every single one except the last. 2023. Mara Penila stared at the alias she had used to book the cabin. Her hands went ice cold. He knew he'd known from the moment she arrived. She scrambled up the ladder, closed the trapdoor, yanked the rug back over it, and ran to the duffel bag. Her phone had no service. Still 0 bars. She opened the blinds a crack and stared into the woods. Far off, by a tree, a figure stood, not moving. Watching. Same brown flannel, same calm posture, a pale mask tucked under one arm. She grabbed her gun and backed away from the window, heart pounding. She knew who it was now. He wasn't just watching, he was waiting. Isla knew she couldn't stay inside. The cabin no longer felt like shelter, it felt like a trap. Every corner whispered, every window felt like an eye. The photos, the names, the locket, the watch, the list. He knew she was here, had been watching her from the moment she arrived. She shoved everything she'd gathered, photos, trinkets, the journal pageant, to her duffel, zipped it shut, and slung it over her shoulder. The revolver stayed in her hand. She opened the front door with a sharp breath and stepped out onto the porch. Scanning the tree line, the figure was gone, but the trees held on to his shape. The afterimage of him burned behind her eyes. She stepped off the porch, boots crunching against old needles and damp soil, and made her way down the trail behind the cabin, past the locket site, past the twisted tire tracks, deeper. The woods thickened the farther she went, but she moved fast. A knot in her chest tightened with each step. That's when she saw it. A clearing, circular, disturbed earth. Small piles of stone stacked in orderly rows. 8 of them. Each one marked with a wooden stake, carved with numbers. No names, just identifiers. 1, 2, 3. She knelt at the third one. Her hand brushed the dirt, fingers trembling. Something pale jutted out near the edge bone. A jaw fragment, clean and dry. Her stomach turned, but she didn't cry. She couldn't. She had cried too many times already. This was different. This was war. She moved to the final mound, number 8. The dirt here was looser, recent. A silver chain glinted at the edge of the mound. She reached out, gently pulled Kala's bracelet. She gasped, knees hitting the ground. Her hand dug faster, scraping at the earth. Her fingers hit soft fabric, then something stiff. A shoulder, flesh. Then she heard it. A breath, not her own. She froze, behind her. Boots crushed twigs. She turned, revolver raised. He stood 10 feet away, face calm, brown flannel shirt streaked with soil. In one hand, he held a shovel. His other hand rested casually against his hip. "Should have left when you could," he said. His voice was deeper than she imagined. Measured, almost bored. "Why?" she said, trying to keep her hand steady. "Why, all of them?" He tilted his head. They were happy. Loud. They didn't understand this place. They didn't respect it. But you listened. She backed up slowly, gun still aimed. You murdered 12 people. His eyes darkened. No, I saved 12 from themselves. You buried them like animals. He chuckled. No, I kept them. Their moments, their sounds, their fear. She felt her legs wobble. Kala screamed, he said, more softly now. Not for herself, for him. It was almost poetic. That word, poetic, it broke something in her. She fired. The shot went wide, clipped a branch behind him. He didn't flinch. He lunged. She barely dodged the shovel as it came down. The gun slipped from her fingers. They collided, his weight crashing into her. She slammed backward into the dirt. He was fast, strong. Calloused hands closed around her throat. She gasped, her fingers clawing at his wrists. You should have stayed. Gone, he growled. Her hands slid to her belt, fingers fumbling for the blade she'd strapped earlier. She found the hilt, yanked it free, and plunged it into his side. He howled, body jerking. She rolled, scrambled across the clearing. Her fingers closed around the revolver, spun back, aimed. He was on his knees, clutching his wound, blood soaking his shirt. You don't understand, he spat. She was mine. First, before your perfect little sister. What did you do to her? His expression twisted. She fought bit. Screamed God, she was strong. That's why I made it last. Illa stepped closer, tears burning, rage boiling beneath her skin. You don't get to keep her. She fired again. The bullet tore through his shoulder, sent him collapsing backward. He groaned, coughed, but stayed down. She walked to the half-dug grave and stared at what little of Kala remained, a body curled like a question. Fingers still reaching for something that never came. Isla dropped to her knees, pulled the bracelet off the wrist and slid it onto hers. I found you, she whispered. Then darkness slammed into her skull from behind. Everything spun, cold, then black. When she woke, her wrists were zip-tied behind her back. A basement, damp, no light, stone walls. She tried to sit, but her head screamed. A voice echoed from the corner. You came looking for ghosts. He said, but I kept the real ones. She turned her head. He sat on a stool, bleeding, broken butt, smiling. You made me bleed, he said. That's special. She looked around. One door, one dim bulb, her gun on a table beside him. He lifted a mask from the floor, antlers, white bone, black holes for eyes. He stood and said, ready for your chapter. Asterisk, the mask hovered inches from her face. He crouched beside her, breathing hard, blood still dripping from the wound she'd left in his side. His fingers traced the curve of the antlers like it was something holy. Illa stayed still, her wrists burning against the plastic zip ties binding them. Her jaw clenched. She would not scream. You're different, he muttered. Most beg, you haven't begged once. She met his eyes. Because I know how this ends, he smirked. Do you? He stood wincing. His hands shook as he lifted the mask and placed it over his face, adjusting the straps at the back. Then he stepped toward the wall, flipping open a small wooden box. Inside were tools, old, rusted, some stained, scissors, rope, a recording device. He clicked it on. Subject 13, he said, female, late 20s, strong, calculated, emotionally driven by sibling trauma. Rare combination, possibility of extended observation. Illa's pulse thundered. He turned toward her with the rope in hand. She started laughing. He froze. What's funny? You really think you're original? She spat. You think you're some misunderstood genius carving poetry out of pain. But you're just another pathetic coward who couldn't make someone love him. He stepped toward her, and she moved fast, while he talked. She'd slipped her bound wrists down to the base of her boots, where her last blade had been tucked deep inside the heel. She kicked it up, caught it with her fingers, and now, with every ounce of strength, she drove it into his thigh. He screamed. The mask fell off as he stumbled backward, crashing into the table. Illa spun, slicing through the zip tie with her blade. Her wrists came free. She launched herself forward, grabbing the revolver off the table before he could. He reached for her. She fired once into his shoulder, then, again into his leg. He collapsed to the stone floor with a howl of pain. I should Kill you, she said, gun shaking in her hand. Right here. He looked up at her, coughing, eyes wide and wild. Then do it. She stepped back. No, she said. You don't get the silence. You don't get to vanish. You don't get peace. She kicked the antler mask away, grabbed her bag, and limped to the basement door. She glanced back once more before slamming the door shut behind her, jamming a metal rod into the handle. His screams followed her up the stairs. She burst into daylight, half-blinded. The sun was just cresting the trees, burning through the morning fog. She staggered down the hill toward the cabin's edge. Blood on her hands, sweat clinging to her skin. Her phone still no signal, but the camera. The photos, the list of names, she had them, and she had his voice on the recorder. Proof. She poured gasoline across the porch, up the stairs, along the walls. The smell was sharp, bitter, final. She stopped in the living room. The rug still covered the trapdoor. She pulled it back and opened the hatch one last time. From inside, his voice echoed faintly. You can't bury what's already part of the ground. She didn't answer. She tossed the open can of gasoline down into the dark. Then she lit the match. The fire caught instantly. Flames crawled across the walls, devouring curtains, beams, paper, wood. She stepped outside, watching the flames climb, feeling the heat on her skin. The cabin burned like it had been waiting for this. She didn't look away. The porch collapsed first, then the roof, then, with a dull roar, the trapdoor caved in, flames shooting skyward. She stood at the edge of the clearing until she heard the sirens in the distance. 3 hours later, she sat in a hospital bed, arms bandaged, lips cracked, voice raspy. 2 deputies hovered nearby. One of them, a quiet young officer, finally stepped forward. We found what was left. In the crawlspace, in the graves, the photos, the recordings. Your name matches the missing person report for Calabria. We owe you. She didn't reply. Instead, she opened her duffel and handed him a sealed Ziploc bag. Inside was the journal page with all the couple's names. Her eyes burned. Give them names again. All of them, he nodded. They never found his body, but the bones in the cellar were human. 5 skulls, more fragments, teeth, jewelry. They called it a serial killer case. One of the worst in the state's history. Isla didn't speak to the press. She disappeared 2 weeks later. Her apartment cleared, her car abandoned. But every year, on the anniversary of the fire, a small package would arrive at the sheriff's office. Inside, a single Polaroid, the burned clearing, the numbered graves, overgrown now, and one sentence scrawled on the back in shaky handwriting. Still listening, still watching. For the rest,